stupid brain. Yes. Can you turn it in, did you say? Did you do it on D2L? Because I know the temptation is to email because it is a little easier, but it's hard.
I did it in Word, and then I went to your D2L and went to the thing to upload, and I put password.
Okay, as long as it said it went in, and you'll sometimes get a confirmation email. You're good. So yeah, you guys still have until like midnight to turn that in. I'm following these chapters week by week. There's like 14, 15 chapters, and we'll have 14 or 15 weeks. So in this one, we kind of start dipping into this ecological perspective here. And I have a video. We were talking about how it's like movie weather. This is about poverty in America. So this is kind of where we're rolling. Anybody have questions before we start up? You can still turn your paper tonight, just a couple pages, so we start out easy. And that's probably it. It's hot, or it's humid, I should say. Any of you guys freezing because it's cold and your AC freezes you out, but yeah. So it's humid, so I sweat all the time, but it's actually a decent enough temperature. So we're going over the poverty in America. This was right after the Great Recession, so 2009. The same thing happened last year with COVID, so we'll probably have another documentary like this about how people were laid off and we lost our jobs. We had a few more things put into place during COVID this year than last. So, but I'm sure the stories will be the same.
The have and the have-nots. The line. The place the people on the bottom are trying to get to. The place the people on the top are trying to keep them going below. They don't want to look before either. They don't want to see them down there because I don't want them to feel too crazy about them.
When we turn into exit, we attach it to
The line is the firing line.
It's in
which people
in
face survival
D2L,
and
yeah.
it's a thing that we attach it to.
Sometimes
Yes,
the person
you should be able to
holding the
upload
gun
it
is
to it.
their neighbor, and sometimes it's their congressman or their alderman who's not doing enough to help them.
A line is where you're always in a position to give help. And then for the first time, this line of I've gone from being somebody who could help to being somebody who needs help.
There's a certain amount of pride that comes in being independent. And there's a certain amount of shame that comes into having to beg for every little thing that you get.
$23,000 is no money, nearly. And yet I can still see families who make $35,000, who are still poor, who are still about to lose their home, who still can't afford groceries.
When you start trying to tell people about poverty, they start making excuses and making heartless statements about why people are in poverty, and they don't even have a clue. They don't even have a clue.
Some of the most prevalent and damaging stereotypes about poor people are that they're lazy, that they're stupid, they don't have any skills, prefer poverty, that they can't take care of their families. Poor people.
So this stat may be up to 3 or more jobs just to make ends meet, just because of inflation right now in the United States.
Working harder, just trying to keep their heads above water than we can even imagine. It's hard.
It doesn't matter if you have to stand in line and kind of feel bad about yourself, that you're a failure. You have to cross that line to be able to keep the lights on, maybe to keep feeding your kids.
That could be you without a house, wondering if they're gonna come put you out. But for the grace of God, because a lot of these people had jobs, have degrees, did everything right. But the bottom fell out. And at the bottom of that line, they went below that line.
Anybody here from Chicago? Do you know this county at all? It's like I guess they say it's one of the richest counties around. But after the 2009 financial collapse, they were saying how people that even made $100,000 a year and six figures lost their job and were going into the food pantry. So this is how we as social workers want to connect them to these services they need when it's an emergency. So like with COVID last year, if anybody remembers, on March 13th, we all got an email like, don't come back from spring break. They're like, just stay at school, stay at home, don't come. And that, so I know it was last year, but it was 2 school years ago. So it was almost a year and a half ago. We all went to spring break and we never came back. And luckily we were able to teach online, but people that got laid off and lost their jobs, it was like, oh crap, what do we do? So it's almost every 10 years we have a recession, and this is kind of explaining what happened 10 years ago, that last recession.
DuPage County is considered one of the richest counties in the state of Illinois, probably one of the top 50 counties in the country as far as per capita income. So there are a lot of well-educated, middle-class, upper-middle-class people that live here. There's also the part of the county that people don't talk about. There's the about 10% of the population that lives at or below the federal poverty line.
Good morning. Here you go. Thank you. Just have a seat over there. Okay, thanks.
I remember the first time that I tried to go, I just couldn't do it. I drove there and I sat there and I couldn't get out of the car. And then the second time I got out of the car, I went in line and then just got either impatient or just sort of embarrassed and just kind of walked away. Because you just don't want to admit that you're that defeated. You've been brought up never to be a charity case, never to have to ask for help, and all of a sudden you're in that position where you got nowhere else to go, and it's hard.
And you have a birthday bag for Jason?
Yes,
Good. How old is Jason?
it's going to be 12.
Suburban poverty is now at currently higher rate than urban poverty. It's been a tidal wave over the last 5 years, whereas maybe before it was a trickle, now it's just suddenly, people standing outside the door of the food pantry waiting for us to open. There's a desperation, and all the organizations haven't been ready to deal with the numbers of people coming through their doors. Private organizations are a drop in the bucket compared to the federal assistance programs. And so I think there's got to be a partnership. We certainly know that we have a responsibility to do the job that we're doing, and we want to do the job we're doing, but we can't do it alone. We need the resources of the government to help.
So you said 2 from here. And 1 from here. Okay. Okay.
Sample size.
All right. And 1 box of cereal. Okay. All right. Here we go. Healthy. What the kids need.
Everyone comes here. It's people that have grown up in poverty to people that had 6-figure jobs, that were running companies that have lost their job. So they're at the end of the rope and they end up here because they don't have anywhere else to turn.
I'm 48 years old, and I have 3 kids, single dad, got a daughter who's 17, and 2 sons. They're 14 and 11. It'll be 12 and 2, so they're Wednesday. So.
Okay. All right.
I was in banking, a senior vice president, making 6 figures. I was very comfortable. The last bank I was at was acquired, went off on my own, and started to organize banks kind of at the perfect wrong time, a perfect storm, and kind of everything fell apart from that.
Okay.
So this guy was at a bank working, making about $100,000 a year. And with the 2009 financial crisis, laid off immediately to zero. So has anybody in here ever volunteered at a food pantry or seen one, or just like kind of the process is usually you'll get canned foods that can be good up to a year after the expiration date. Like dry foods are good up to like 6 months. And then they always try to get you to take as much bread as you can, as that might go moldy tomorrow if you don't freeze it. So that's kind of what he's doing right now.
My wife at that time filed for divorce because we were in an affluent town. Kind of the stress of all it took its toll on our marriage, and pretty much that was it. I had to decide what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had always in the back of my mind thought about teaching. My mom was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, my sister was a teacher. So I kind of thought, well, maybe this is my signal to make that transition. Sometimes you just feel like you're sending your resume into a black hole. You talk, to a principal, or you follow up and they're like, we've got 4,000 applicants. And you're like, okay, how do I get noticed? How do I do anything? Pretty much I've been on my own for 2 years, trying to make by on substitute teaching income, trying to make by on any tutoring income I can get on the side. In substitute teaching, you're looking at $85 to $100 a day, depending if you get called into work that day. And usually it's last minute. You may get a phone call at 5:30 in the morning. For me, best case, if I'm working almost every day, I can make $12,000. That would be the best we can do.
So usually unemployment goes for a period of 6 months. During this time, they extended it to a year, up to a year and a half. So if you had a high-paying job and had to file for unemployment, you get maybe half of your salary. You don't get the full amount. And then, as he mentioned, substitute teaching, you could do like 100 a day. This is before Uber and DoorDash and even like Amazon, where you could make 100 in 4 hours delivering food. It was kind of before smartphones. I think they had just started coming out. So he had to substitute teach, very similar to what happened to a lot of us last year.
I never thought I would be in that position. I was a straight A student. I got a high ACT, went to a great school, graduated high honors. Everything was roses. Everything's perfect in your life. Coffee, always desperate for coffee. You have to work really hard to find the way to get by. The government isn't really seeking you out to say, we want to help you get you back on your feet.
All the bread you want? Oh, the bread? Okay. All right.
I mean, I'm insulted if somebody says, John, you're just lazy. You're just not trying. You just don't care. I'm like, I care. I care more than anybody. Thank you very much. It's sort of like being at a grocery store where not everything's been put on the shelf, but you just have to do the best you can and hope you get enough that can help you to get through each month. So you kind of put your own choices to the back burner because you just have to try to look and say, what do you really need?
think that there's a real divide in this country and that people are struggling. The people that maybe are sort of untouched by the recession think that, oh, well, unemployment is going down and, things are starting to look up. Businesses are starting to hire people. They're not seeing those people that have really, really been struggling for a long, long time.
You have to make choices sometimes about what bills you're gonna pay. I mean, I've had my gas shut off, I've had my electric shut off. It's horrifying. It's embarrassing when your kids go to turn on something that doesn't work. It's the most horrible thing in the world. Kids just don't get it. I think that's been the hardest thing, is just to answer the questions. My youngest son, I'll just say, Dad, when are you gonna get your car fixed? And it's like, well, when I can, And I have gotten used to checking for the expiration dates sometimes. Just gotta be careful. Not that you're angry, you're grateful that you get what you get, but one time I got some LP that somebody donated. It was 5 years old. It's like a black brick. I'm hoping that I can hold on for at least another year, maybe two. My kids at the age they are, I really want to be around for them, so moving isn't an option for me. I just feel like I've aged so much. It's like a constant kind of throbbing in your mind of like, what am I gonna do? I don't want to worry about this anymore, but you just don't know how to stop it. You're doing everything that every person says is the right thing to do, the right steps to follow, but it's not happening. And what if it doesn't happen? What if it doesn't happen fast enough?
So now we're going into Chicago and a different community. They have 4 different stories on this overall and kind of explaining their different experiences with the poverty line in general. It's a lot more expensive to live in Chicago. So that's just one thing to keep in mind.
I do think that a lot of the violence and a lot of what is going on right now is associated with people who are living with post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma is simply a sudden shift in the ways in which we understand life and make meaning. Trauma in a psychological or more psychosocial sort of sense in which I'm poor now. Wow, what am I supposed to do? Or the other experience of people who have lived in poverty their entire life, and their mother did, and their grandmother did, and their grandmother did. So there have been generations of poverty, and theirs is a more deeper trauma, which is affiliated with this sort of nihilism or this sense of meaninglessness and hopelessness that says we will always be this way. This will always be the case.
We're on Monroe and Pulaski, and it's considered K-Town from Pulaski to Laramie because of the Karloff Keeler case. And this is where I grew up, in this house, with my family, my mother, my 2 sisters, and 3 brothers. My sister was going to play for church, which was about a block that way, about 2 blocks over. And she was walking, it was like around 10 or so. She was coming down around the corner. She was shot and killed. She was shot in the head and killed. Police never came. They came for that night, but there was never an investigation. So as far as I'm concerned, they never found out who actually killed her. But that destroyed our family, pretty much. That was the beginning of the end of the family that we knew. Just one bullet. We never recovered. One bullet, you know, and we never recovered. I think the thing that bothers me the most is that my sister wasn't a statistic. She had a name. She had a family. She had people that loved her, who depended on her for their survival, literally for their survival emotionally. And it's hard for me even to come down this block. It's a long time that I can even drive down this block because I always think about the day that I heard the bullet.
It's crazy in these streets, and it's hard right now to start judging. But when you get enough pain, it's good enough kids wondering if God still loves us.
So I go by Jay Quest, and my music is what my ministry is. It's around helping people understand that you're human and that you have a ton of possibility and a ton of potential inside of you. And we need to hear that more in these communities of poverty. People are killing each other for some very plain reasons, because whether they're poor or not, in terms of a quantitative measurement, they feel poor. They feel like they need more. They feel less than human. They feel offended by their government. They feel offended by their neighbor.
It's crazy, it's a world we create. And it's like my dreams are reach. It's crazy, it's God in presence. It's crazy, it's my brain.
Most of the young people where I grew up in K-Town, they didn't expect to live past 18, 20. Because their friends are dying like, around them. Like this is literally a war. They never know from one day to the next. If you're gonna wake up and your friend is gonna be gone, or if it's gonna be you. So there is no hope. You know why they're not so keen on education? Because education means you plan to have a future. They don't plan to have a future. They think that the streets are gonna kill them. That's their reality. One of my first jobs was working at a bank downtown. And when I would say to people where I came from, where I lived, they would be so shocked. Really? You lived over there? Because they don't expect people from K-Town or certain areas to be able to get out and get good jobs and to actually look like success. I was one of the youngest supervisors at the bank. And I didn't have my first child till I was 30. I didn't have to depend on anyone, and all the bottom fell out in one fall. It's just all the bottom fell out.
So she was also a banker and made about $100,000 a year. And this is kind of her story of sometimes things can turn on a dime that could bring somebody to the poverty line.
There was a screw. My boot got caught in the screw and I fell head first, 14 feet into a wall. I broke my arm into two places. I knocked my brain into my spinal column. So it's caused me to start having strokes. I ended up having to have brain surgery where they had to take a big piece of my skull out so my brain could breathe. It took me 15, 20 years to finally get back to where I could be up and around. And keep in mind that I had a 7-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I knew I needed to leave, to move out of that neighborhood when my son turned 7.
See, I had a lot of fun as a child running up and down the block. I didn't realize that I was around one of the biggest drug operations right behind my house. There was a lot of stuff being sold in and out through there. They'd ask me to take something to someone else. I've done that in the building, and I didn't even realize what I was doing. I was just delivering, thinking, hey, they asked me to take this down.
Some of these little boys I knew were bad news. He didn't, but I knew. This house that we live in now used to belong to my parents. And then when my father passed, the house was just too much for my mother to handle. So my sister, my brother, myself, we all moved out here to live with my mom. And together we made it a community home, which is what, quite often happens when people are trying to, get out of a bad situation. Right after, about a year after my accident, I realized that I would not be the same. And I went on disability. And disability gave me $1,000. I think it was, at that time, it was like $900 a month. I had 3 children. They gave me $900 a month for me. And they gave me $122, I think, for each child. Keep in mind, that's to pay my rent. I had food stamps, but it wasn't a lot. So a lot of times we would run out of food stamps.
So the food stamps they mention often only last 2 or 3 weeks. So that's a lot of times as social workers connecting to the final piece. There are, I think even today in our parking lot, we had the food being handed out, maybe even still now from like 1 until 3, and they're giving out vegetables in the parking lot over here. But just connecting to food sources because the food stamps may not go the entire month.
It's not that much different. Yeah, but it's not as organized. Giving my children hope, that was the hard part because they went to a private school. So they lived with all these people who were very well off, who drove nice cars, whose parents were giving them credit cards to spend carte blanche. And then they came back here. And I'm saying, no, we don't buy name brand gym shoes. No, we're not going out to eat. We got to do whatever mama's got to cook. It was disappointing from a mother's point because I wanted to give them the best. And I always thought when I had my children, I was going to be able to shower them. That was my desire. And I think most parents, that was my desire, but I wasn't able to do that.
So now they're going to Louisiana, and this was after the oil spill that kind of killed off the fish, which was their way of life down here. So understanding even the cycle of nature and how challenges come with that. Supposedly this year and next are supposed to be in a grand solar minimum, so food production will go down because of that, and food may become more expensive to buy in the next few years.
Born and raised in this little town called Devant, Louisiana, in 1945. Just about everyone in this community had done fishing of one type or another, either crab fishing, shrimping, or oystering, at least part-time. It was a wonderful way to make a living. God gave us a heaven here, a gold mine. It was there for the taking. Anyone that wanted to make a good, honest living could do it. All they needed was a strong back and a little bit of brains. No matter what time of year it was, we were either shrimping, crabbing, dredging oysters. A person that didn't have any work could come to this marina, go by the conveyance where they were unloading in the evening, and hey, I need a job. Okay, show up here tomorrow morning. You had a job. The people of this area, this entire area, depend on the environment. They depend on what God gave us. And God gave us down here. But we didn't know how to take care of it. Just falling by, slowly flowing through my head.
So again, getting into the cycles in nature, it was a lot easier to do what he said in the 90s and early 2000s to just show up at a dock and get a job. I drove my car across the country once and it broke down somewhere in Colorado, and I had to jump on a construction crew and just like work construction with a buddy and pay to fix my car and drive home. You could do that back then. It's getting a little bit harder now. Either there's more people or less jobs or both, just because there's more people in the same amount of jobs. It's harder to just show up and work somewhere nowadays.
Had someone told me 10 years ago that this place would be this dormant, I'd never believed it. I never would have believed it. But it's happened, and it's happened so quickly. It's just unimaginable. I don't know if it's because of the natural disaster that we had with Katrina or the oil spill. The natural resources are not there anymore. The coastline is washing away.
We just had a hurricane over the weekend, and it kind of hit that area again, but the dams did not break. So in like 05 and 06, if anybody remembered hearing of Hurricane Katrina, all the dams broke and the city flooded, and everybody was in a disaster area. This time around, we still did have destruction, and there's, as you can see, like a lot of the wetlands are disappearing where they get the mussels and get the shrimp. Anybody ever here eaten mussels before? Or like oysters, I guess? I'm a vegetarian, so I don't, but my wife loves them. She's like, they're the best thing. I think they kind of look like a snotty booger, but I guess if you cook them, they taste okay.
There's places that when I was in high school, we used to go out and hunt rabbits. And now those places don't exist. They're all gone. They're gone. Completely gone. It's a minimum on average of 3 years before that oyster's ready for the market to be harvested. Next year there'll be no oysters. For 3 years there won't be any oysters. And this year we had a very low harvest of shrimp. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I don't have any confidence in the future. Unless we get a drastic change, a sudden change in the amount of seafood and the prices, there's no way that I can continue to do this and survive with it. Because all I'm doing now is losing money. And I just can't do it. The numbers don't add up. They just don't add up. Okay. I don't worry about myself that much. It's only just me and Bonnie. We'll survive. But my children, I worry about my children. This community, I've seen a change not only with income, but I can see a change in the people. The people that are still here are not happy anymore. The people were always jolly. They didn't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow was taken care of. And now everyone's worried. They're all stressed. Catholic Charities was here up until last week paying people's utilities for them. They couldn't pay them. And now they're gone. They left last week. So a lot of these families that were dependent on that, they don't even have that now. So, in this great United States, believe it or not, we're gonna have people down here that are gonna have their electricity cut off. And they're gonna be living that way. I hope that it gets better. But deep down inside, being realistic, I don't see it. It's just a culture, the whole culture. The whole culture's gone.
Now they're going to North Carolina next, so it's another beach property where a lot of the beaches you do see a bit more homelessness because it's more temperate weather. It doesn't get as cold in the winter, and you can cool off on the beach in the summer. So there is a lot of homeless. Later in the semester, I'll show you tent cities all over Los Angeles and LA County and places like that.
Poverty is struggling to make things work. When you have to struggle paycheck to paycheck, it's poverty. You try to fight yourself out of it, but you can't. You can't. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, with my two sisters and my brother, my mother, and my father, until my father decided to just leave the house and leave us by ourselves, which hurt my mother mentally and got her unstable. We would have never survived if welfare didn't approve us and we were getting food stamps every month and not me by myself. I wouldn't have been able to do it, and I had to give up going to college. Went down to the racetrack in New York City with a friend of mine, started hop walking horses coming off the track, and that's where I started working, which was at the racetrack, and turned around and did it for 22 years. It was every day, 365 days a year, and that was it. There was never a day off. I came here to North Carolina and I racetrack. And when you come off of that, everybody's like, okay, so what skill do you have? It's like, you really don't. You know, I had a skill of putting horses on the racetrack. I was in the shelter 3 months. It's a hard thing because North Carolina, the unemployment rate is 9.4. It's one of the highest in the United States. Being in the shelter, I wasn't ashamed of it. I did it on my own. I wasn't there because I used drugs, because I was an alcoholic. I refused to sleep in the street. I wasn't going to get put in jail for sleeping in the street. Every day, I used to get up, get dressed, and go out to look for a job and stuff like that. And then when I found out about Jim Noble's restaurant and the church services that they have here, and I introduced myself.
It is a 501c faith-based, not-for-profit restaurant. That's unusual. In fact, there's not been many done like this, I don't think. And it only has two parts. One is to help raise money for a nonprofit that we give all the profits away to people poor. Secondly, King's Kitchen Restoration Program, which is a discipleship, life-changing program to help people get back on their feet. through on-the-job training, obviously, Bible study, discipleship. Even though it's a ministry, we also are a restaurant, and we have to compete, and we have to execute, and we have to run the restaurant, right, and the whole thing would fall. And this is not an easy industry to be in anyway. Restaurant business is tough.
I came here and I volunteered here, and they told me as a dishwasher, I've never worked in a restaurant before. Cole, we got a fork time getting up. And it shocked everybody how fast I pick it up. When I put my mind to something that I really want to do, I know I can do it. I'll come with a big tray. Thank you for calling King's Kitchen this afternoon. This is James. How can I assist you?
So a lot of the work as social workers is connecting them with trainings and resources to be able to move from homelessness to employment. So like this gentleman with his job, kind of just slowly moving up that they're showing.
One day, Chef Jesse came up to me. He goes, we all came together to hire you. I said, you did it. He goes, you start tomorrow. Like me to take your place again? Is everything okay? Please come back. And when I started working here, they worked with my hours down at the shelter. They saved me bad. And when I got my first paycheck, I went in the paper and saw this place and took the bus down there, filled out the application, and there's a 1-bedroom apartment ready. And that was the last time the shelter saw me. When I got off the bus, I put my hand in my pocket and I had the keys to my own place. And when I opened up the door, I was like, home. First thing that I did, I called up my 2 sisters and my brother. Your brother is just fine. Your brother's fine. And my sister goes, you riding the shelter? I said, yep. I said, I got my own place and everything. Adam, is it the only dishes that don't match over here? 8 months later, I'm still here. I'm the head busboy. Please come again. I love work. I don't stop. When I come in the morning, I get here an hour before my shift starts. How you doing? How's everything? My income right now, I would make in a year between about $11,000 to $15,000. People in poverty live in poverty-stricken areas. People who have money don't even go close to where those people live. Do you think they worry about who's living on the street? No, because they were never part of it. And if you're not part of it, why think about it? Try to climb the ladder by yourself sometimes. It's hard. I don't judge people, and I hope that people don't judge me. And that's how I've always lived.
I think hope is important for people who are in poverty because that's the only thing that's going to stop them from making a desperate move to make life better. If you have no hope and you don't think Superman's coming, you may jump yourself. And when I say jump, I don't mean killing yourself. I mean making rash decisions and doing things that may be even uncharacteristic for yourself because you're so desperate.
We cannot be silent while that happens. We cannot say, oh, well, that's on them. No, systems need to be broken to stop poverty too. Policy needs to change in order to stop poverty. And there need to be people in place who can properly change policy to help poverty. At the same time, there are people who are poor who need to know that there's a way out of this and need to know that they are more than their poverty. Because I believe that if we tell people that they are better than they think they are, that they will do better than they think they can.
This is not the end. We will shine like the stars.
every other day you'll see like gang violence going on outside the school, or kids fighting. But what really keep me calm is either drawing or playing basketball.
We bring young people in, and most of them have already either dropped out or are in situations where they're not doing well in school. Where I come from, this component is around adding creativity to their life. Creativity and dignity, the two key words here, and saying, okay, you have not only something to learn in terms of math and science towards getting your GED, but you have a story to tell. You've seen something. And what I want to do is help you tell that story. We want to help you tell that story because once you can tell that story, you can own your life. You own your identity. So helping them to tell those stories is one way of giving them hope in the midst of what they're going through. Poor is not what you are. Poor is part of what you are, and it's a situation that can change.
This is not the end. This is not the end of this. We'll open my eyes wide, wide. This is not our last. This is not our last breath. We will open.
I started a nonprofit called Born to Be Light, and I came up with a pledge. Born to Be Light is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the aggressive promotion of nonviolence. And they take the pledge, and the pledge is right on the front, and it says, I wear this band to take a stand against violence. I pledge to be the change you see in my home and community because I'm a light. So I go around to the schools and communities and functions, and I have the people wear the band. I have them take the pledge, and it works. It really works. So I'm not just sitting back waiting for somebody to give me something. I'm trying to help myself. I'm trying to help my community. I understand that people might look at me and say, well, you're getting a handout. You're on disability. But I promise you, if I could be anything but on disability, I would. And I've done everything that I can do to make myself better. I've written a book. I've gone back to school. I've done a CD. I do outreach programs. I do everything that I'm supposed to do. So the fact that I'm still on disability is still no fault of mine. But since my accident, I haven't had one day that I haven't had pain, but it hasn't stopped me from going to school and being on the dean's list and a president's scholar. It hasn't stopped me.
This is not the end. This is not the end. We will shine like the stars.
I'm doing mechanics, I'm working, I do computers, I do art and music. I'm doing fire safety to try to become a fireman. Though I am poor, I do not consider myself poor because I feel like as long as there's a person watching over me, as long as I'm connected with my family, and as long as my legs and body work and I'm able to go out and make some money, there's no way that I will feel poor.
So this is a stat we went over in class last week about how some of the programs that started from social work in the 50s and they really took off in the 60s kind of started cutting the poverty rate and giving a hand up. So empowering people to empower themselves. So this kind of showing ways we advocate as social workers, and kind of getting through the few slides I had on the earlier class, just some of the different systems that we give into. So you saw like the folks that help connect them with food stamps, those that help them with job training, different social workers that help them with even getting to the food pantry when needed. Some of the, as social workers, we learn what the unmet needs are of somebody, the input, processing it, the output, getting them to the services they do need, and then getting feedback, how we can do it more efficiently, how we can do it better. And I'm going to stop it here. I really want, if you guys haven't gotten a chance to jump onto your paper yet, to make sure you do that and have that ND2L tonight. We'll do the rest of this PowerPoint later on. Most of my stuff is open till about midnight, so make sure to sign in if you haven't done the sign-in sheet, and that is all I have for today.